Hello, Mike Levin here, coding a very simple crawler to live and be used inside of Google Spreadsheets, and I'm up to a point where I have successfully fetched the HTML of a provided URL, crammed it into a cell, but that's not what we're interested in. We want to grab a list of the URLs off of the page. And whenever you get up to that step, there's the typical process of looking for the best current way. And lots of people mention Beautiful Soup, but I think that is an ages ago thing. I think lxml itself, without a special parsing library, is probably enough to start getting this job done. If we need to switch to a more permissive XML, HTML parser, we can, but it's quite simple code to just use lxml, which I have ready to go. I went into the scraper function or area of Pipulate, found this code, which showed me how I can create a new instance of a lxml object, which is precisely what's being done here. There actually is already an existing lxml object that they're calling doc, and they're calling the xpath method of it within every anchor text XML XPath address. Sometimes it gets to be like bubblegum terminology here. So the way they're creating their lxml object is right here. And that's close enough to what we're going to need, where we can just pick that up and go over here and switch into our crawl function that we're working on. And right here we're sitting on top of that text, which in this thing is being called content, but we can just call that ro.text. Right? So now we've got a doc object, but not quite. I don't think I have the lxml object here, so we need to let's see what their import was. We're going down to html.fromString. Yeah, that's pretty much the import we need. They're using eTree here. Parser, eTree. Not sure if we're going to need that yet. No, we'll see. Keep that in mind, that they're also importing lxml.etree. But at any rate, here's our import. And now I should be able to create an object from here, which is very similar to the example they give down here, right? And some object, my list of lists, equals that. So let's start with that. I want to keep in mind what I'm creating. This is a link object. Let's just call it links for now. Equals doc.xpath. And this is where I would use my gotcha. I can try returning it into the Google spreadsheet, stuffing it into the cell, but sometimes it's useful to just stop execution right here and see what I'm sitting on top of. And I'll take that as an opportunity to show you how my debugging console works. So I've got a little code which I think is solid. Sometimes you would try and end the function or return it or stop it or something, but I have that all accommodated for in my gotcha function, which is right at the top of my main Pipulate function. So whenever you need to see what gotcha is doing, it's just right near the top of pipulate.py, and it's taking care of all that system exit stuff. So it's just showing you why gotcha. So we flip over here, we can pull up our debugging output for a minute and see that we didn't make any errors. It's restarting successfully. This is our Pipulate window from the last go around. I'm just going to close out of that. I was displaying HTML. That could have been a bit hairy. I'll bring Pipulate back up, requiring us to log in again. I really have to address that. It seems like if it's an hour or so between uses, it requires login again. Not the worst thing in the world. Those tokens expiring is good, since I'm using them in a sort of visible way, and that might be what's responsible here. The Google OAuth 2 authentication system might be forcing a more rapid expiration of those tokens. Ah, there we go. This is my gotcha. If you scroll up, let's see, where would that be? Error. Oh, global name gotcha is not defined. So here is another one that I have to move into common so that I can use gotchas now in the user-defined functions. So I'm glad I showed you here. Shift V, down arrow, pick up all these guys, save it. See if I have common loaded. I don't need globs.py anymore, so I will delete that buffer. And no, I don't think I do. This is where I copied from. So load my common.py, jump over to it, paste the function. I like it at the top. That's where I'll keep it. So now two functions from what's sort of like the framework of Pipulate are now accessible to user functions. It's a very deliberate process of moving these over because I don't want to like pollute the namespace of user functions, so that namespaces generally don't have to be used in user functions. But the price here is not having all those helper functions from Pipulate.py available in the user functions, and I'll move them here as I want them available. And that means I can retry. And the point is really to watch the debug output. So let's see if we can get both of these. We can get everything worth watching showing. Yeah, maybe like that. Gotcha. Raise system exit. Oh, yeah, it worked exactly as I thought. There's gotcha. And it's showing me a object full of a bunch of elements. So there's going to be an element that I can iterate through. This is exactly how gotcha is used. I was looking for some sort of list coming back. And now that clears the way for the next step. It's sometimes good if you're doing this debugging to scroll to the bottom, so that when you do your next thing, the debug window scrolls instead of staying at the last place you were looking at. So that means the advice that I found here, this iterating, I can probably do. And let's see. I'll just copy that. We're sitting on top of the object here. Now you'll see I didn't put myself into paste mode, so I have to unindent a little bit, but no big deal. And for EL element list in links, let me use some better language for my use. For link in links, let's see, EL was the singular one, so that's link.xpath. And here, same thing. And I think I will simply, inside that same loop, print text, comma, href. So that's kind of mixing the fact that print uses parentheses with tuple syntax. So that should output just fine in the debugging window. And then it'll reach gotcha, so it'll force the stopping of the execution, which is fine. Let's make sure. Okay. Yes, the gotcha sometimes freezes up the UI. No big deal, because you just close a pipulate window and open it again. Pretty much the same way you terminate pipulate action and try again. Well, there we have it. And that's all that data in the... yucky, yucky. Looks like a lot more than a list of links, doesn't it? Well, it's starting to look a little more like a list of links. A lot of JavaScript. That XPath seems to be grabbing a little bit more than I hope and intend. There's the gotcha stuff. Maybe it's true, maybe it's accurate. Let's take a quick look at that view source. No, the page really isn't that big. Sure, there's lots of links on it, but the link plus anchor text should not be that ugly. Let's not print the anchor text. Let's just print the href value and see if it's a little prettier. If I actually got something closer to what I wanted than what it looks like from that output. Maybe I did. And again, this is that scrolling to the bottom so that you can watch the debug output as it goes, which is a real pleasure for anyone who'd been on like Nginx and Apache. You know, this is like watching the log file in real time, which is conceivably possible, but it takes lots of stupid tricks. Now, each one of these does in fact look like an href. This could be in fact more correct than I was thinking at first. So it's definitely a list here. There's those commas and there's URLs. It's looking good. I am going to shove that into the cell now, and then my next step will probably be looking at how to make it just on-site links, which will probably pare that back to a much more reasonable amount for doing row inserts, which is what we're working towards. We don't want to insert rows if it's off-site links. We're analyzing our own site. So go back to that code, and we can just return, let's see, for linking links. Now, there's a links object being created. I'm just going to return links. Forget about that stepping through it. Let's see what's in links when we shove it into a cell, shall we? And remember, it's the gotcha function that's locking up the UI. That's deliberate. Doesn't look like it worked. Let's see what debugging says. Pipulating. There's our error. Oh, it's a type error. is not JSON serializable. So I do believe that when I have those big strange objects that I'm trying to shove into a cell, from the work that I did the other day, I'm actually trying to make sure it all gets put into JSON format. JSON dumps new row. Oh, that's for displaying the output. 809. We don't really need to display that output. Let's jump to 809 in our main file, pipulate.py, and edit that out. See if we can do some field stuffing. Yep, there we go. But it is that text representation of a list of objects. So what you're seeing here is these square brackets at either end of this is showing the string representation of a list. And then each of these is the string representation of the Python object in memory that contains the match to //a, which has to be further parsed. And it's looking a lot more manageable right here. I'm very close. It's not quite the step I wanted to take for this video. I would have rathered a list of the clean URLs in here, perhaps plus their anchor text. But I'll settle for this video. We're making steady progress forward, and on the next video I will turn it into just that, a clean list of links and perhaps also the anchor text if it doesn't make it too messy. And then right after that we will turn it into the type of lists that insert rows needs, and just it'll be that one-page crawl that we're working towards, and then we'll add a couple of functions for Mobilegeddon checks. Thanks for joining me. Talk to you soon. Don't forget to subscribe.